Hey guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with the patch breakdown for patch 5.3. This is going to be the arcane update, and as usual when we go from a D patch to a major patch like point 0.2 to point 0.3, as this one is, it's going to be a rather huge update. But honestly, I feel that out of the last couple of huge updates to point 0.2, point 0.1, and 5.0, I think this one is actually a little bit smaller than the previous couple. So I think that there's a huge focus on events and a little bit less on gameplay, but we'll sort of go through them. So first up, later today or early tomorrow, depending on where you live, Heimerdinger is going to be released. Of course, it's an arcane champion and has interesting mechanics where you mostly rely on your turrets to do damage instead of yourself. So this one's going to be a pretty interesting one. Then we have the new rank season, of course, starting again later today or early tomorrow, where we have the glorious Crown Jin as the rank reward skin. New wild pass with Kha'Zix's Dream Raider, Kha'Zix, and the mini pass will be Elderwood Zaya. So if you guys got Elderwood Rakan on the previous, or the current, I guess you could say, the current wild pass, because at the time of recording, we're still on the previous patch. If you got Rakan, then you have the matching Zaya to go with it. So there's going to be a ton of events, but for some reason they're not really in a really good order. But basically we have the Firelight's Reignite event, where I guess it's not really an event, it's like a story mode. So if you guys like that, now they're gonna display your previous ranks, things like that. I tend to skim through these because I don't really think they're very important. Things like this, missions, tutorials. So here we have a new kind of paid system, I guess you could say, where it's a 30-day monthly purchase. So you have two versions, the Stella Corn's Gift and Celestial Blessing. One is $5. I'm not even sure what currency this is, or $4.99. I don't know what currency this is, and another $35.99. Again, I don't know what currency this is. But basically, with this, you basically get to buy more. So you're paying more to spend more, which is totally a right thing to do. But this one is basically you're paying $5 to buy an extra weekly chest from the store each week. So essentially you're paying $5 to buy 4 more weekly chests in total, and you get 10% off when purchasing champions, which, let's face the facts, is completely irrelevant unless you're a new player, because at this point, I have over 400k blue motes. I think it's coming close to 500k at this point. I can't even, I don't have anything to spend it on anymore, and I think most of the veteran players would be the same as well. So again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but basically this one allows you to buy more loot chests. You get more XP, you get skin trials for your whole team, you get a sidebar notification, you get personalized collectibles icon borders, home guard trails, and spawn tags. You can put 2 more teammates on the avoid list, so it's going to be 2 plus 2, which is 4, which I guess might be the only possible actual useful feature depending on how important you think this is, which I think is meh. And again, the same discount. So really, I don't think any of these are worth it at all whatsoever. So yeah. So next up, we have a Facebook sharing feature and a ton of events. As I said, all of them are generally starting at when the patch releases. So we have Cheers to Arcane, Heimerdinger's Tech Frenzy, 4th Anniversary Celebration, where we should be getting a lot of free stuff. And we have a raffle party for the anniversary as well, and a battle challenge as well coming out a little bit later. So let's get into the meat of it, which is champion changes. Now, there aren't a lot of champion changes. So the first main change is, I'm going to talk about it as a group. So ADCs in general are getting lower base AD. So Ezreal, 6 lower base AD, Zaya also 6, Vayne 4, and Kalista 8. So now, initially, I always really felt that base stats are really not that important, but recently I have kind of changed my mind on that. I actually think base stats are very noticeable and very important, because the kind of logic is, base stats, yeah, it's only 4, 6, or 8 AD, but that is actually really important because you start off with that, and every time you auto attack and every time you cast a spell, for example Ezreal, every time you cast a Q, if you have 6 lower base AD, there's going to be a slightly less damage, right? And this slightly less damage is going to add up over the first 5 minutes of the game, up till the point where you actually hit your previous AD. So here in this case, your AD per level is only going up by 0.5. So to actually recoup this 6 AD, you're gonna have to be level 12, which is basically like a level 13, which is like late game. So this is actually a really huge nerf to like ADCs in general. They are getting compensated by having better AD per level here. Xayah gets better AD per level by 1, and Vayne gets more attack speed per level, which I guess you would prefer on Vayne compared to having attack damage. So I guess it's a little bit lesser of a nerf, but yeah, ADCs in general are getting quite a hit. But of course, all ADCs love AD because you auto attack a lot, so having more AD is always going to be what you want. So huge nerf to all of these ADCs, and Kalista gets an even bigger nerf. He gets 8 AD reduction. Of course, you get 1 extra AD per level, but you're still going to have to be level 9 to recoup the loss here, which is insane. And Ren is getting a very big change as well. Base damage is the same, but the percentage of your attack damage is actually going down in the early level. So like it goes like from, actually wait, it's going up, sorry. It goes from 30 to 35% and then 42 to 47%. So I guess you do get a little bit of compensation here. But Kalista is one of those champions that's very, very strong in the early game. Like, she has the strongest like level 1, 2s, and 3s of the champion. So now with 8 less base AD and better scaling on her E, maybe that will no longer be the case. This is probably going to be a really huge change, so we're going to have to kind of see you know, what really happens. Tristana also getting the same kind of change as Kalista, where you get less base AD, more AD per level, and you get better scaling on your explosive charge, which is your E, that bomb, which is one of your main points of damage. Tristana kind of similar to Kalista, where early game she's really strong and she kind of needs kills to scale and snowball, rather, I guess you could say. So this is probably going to hit Tristana and Kalista a lot harder than it's going to hit like Ezreal, Xayah, and Vayne. But yeah, so Milio, not surprising, but I did feel he was a little bit on the stronger side, is getting a nerf. So his passive is doing slightly less damage, goes from 15 plus 2.5 to 13 plus 2. So overall, just a little bit less damage on the passive, which again will add up because it's a damage over time. This one, I think, is where the real kind of nerf comes in, where the attack range scaling is going down by a significant margin at all ranks, especially the later ranks. So like, for example, 20% to 16.5%. I think this is perfectly reasonable. I think he was giving way too much range. Like, the person was just untouchable. I still think the person will be relatively untouchable who has his buff, but it's definitely going to be a little bit more danger because you have to like get a little bit closer. And then your ulti cooldown is going up by 10 seconds. I think this one's okay as well. Milio was pretty strong. And then we have game mode changes. Okay, so again, I'm not really going to spend too much time on the ones that don't matter. Arena tab is like getting rearranged. The practice tool and single player are getting kind of like optimized, combined, you know, etc. So now into the gameplay changes. We have 4. I mean, they say new, but it's not really new, right? So Hextech Soul Stealer is basically the Awakened Soul Stealer. Same, I think it's like same price, and the stats are very, very similar. I think they really only changed passive, if I'm not wrong. 15 Magic Pen I think is also the same. So every time you take down an enemy within 3 seconds of damaging them, your ability cooldowns are reduced by 25%. I think this one is the same. I think this is the new part. You steal 15% of their base movement speed for 10 seconds and 75% of their ability haste until they spawn. Ability haste stolen this way stacks. So this is an item that's not built by a lot of mages. And again, for this item to really be good, you have to kill people. So if you're behind, this item kind of sucks. If you're ahead, this item is pretty good because you're going to kill people a lot more easily. Stealing their movement speed is pretty good for mages. Stealing their ability haste is also amazing for mages because you can, of course, keep stealing it and getting very low ability cooldown. So this could be a very good item, but because like mages have so many good items, right? You have Ludens, you have Infinity Orb. Of course, you want to build Death Cap like pretty much every game. And the other route, if you're not building like, if you're not like a Ludens champion, is gonna be items like Lich Bane, you know, items like Riftmaker, things like that. So I don't really know if you have space to fit in this Hextech Soul Stealer in your build, but it's a pretty interesting concept. We'll have to see if it actually affects the meta. So Stormrazor is of course an item that I'm really familiar with. You definitely have the same base stats as the normal Stormrazor. The price, I think, is like cheaper by 100 gold if I'm not wrong. I think Stormrazor's 3100 if I'm not wrong. And the only real change is the bonus magic damage is the same. Slowing target for 0.75 seconds is the same. The main difference is here. It grants you movement speed for 0.75 seconds. So 60 movement speed for 0.75 seconds, that's not even a second. I really don't think this is gonna make very big difference, but the 100 gold price decrease might make a difference. I'm not sure. I still think Storm Razor looks like a pretty trash item, but sometimes the tiniest of changes can change the meta, so it is possible that ADCs might rush Storm Razor first, but I think it's unlikely. Then we have Black Cleaver, which I think has gotten a pretty decent buff, as has Zeke Convergence. So I think the first two items matter a little bit less. I think these two matter a little bit more. So the main change to Black Cleaver is this. So the total of 24% is still the same, but it used to be, I think, 6 instances of 6, if I'm not wrong, 1, 2, 3, 4, no, that can't be, 6 instances of 4%. So it was 6 instances of 4% reduction. So it used to be reduce their damage by their armor by 4%, and you stack up to 6 times, and now it's reduced by 6%, and you stack it up to 4 times. So now instead of taking 6 hits to reach 24%, you only take 4 hits. Now removing 2 hits is a pretty big deal because most of the time people build Black Cleaver mainly for the stat line and not for the passive. And like you have champions like, okay, let's say you have like Darius, right? So with Darius, you do want to hit one guy continuously to stack up your passive, but in the grand scheme of things, you don't stack Black Cleaver up very easily because not everyone is just gonna stand there and let you hit them. You're normally gonna hit them only like let's say 2-3 times they're running away, something like that. And this is where this is really gonna matter, where you reduce the armor by more, so they're gonna take more damage from, let's say, your ADC who's behind you, and this could, you know, matter. So I think this is a pretty decent buff. And Ziggs, I think, in my opinion, gets the pretty much best buff. So of course, these are the same. You get when you cast ultimate, you get the Blizzard. So the Blizzard, of course, deals damage and slows, which is I think that's the same, but I think the slow might be more now, and the damage is definitely more as well. And you leave a trail behind you. Allied champions on the trail will gain 55 bonus movement speed for 1 second. Now, the reason why this is huge is Ziggs is normally built by engaged support. So let's say you have a Leona or a Nautilus. So let's say if you have Ziggs' first item on Leona. Leona ults, right? It's gonna trigger the Blizzard and it's gonna trigger the trail. The next thing Leona's gonna do, she's gonna E onto the enemy. So this is gonna leave a huge trail behind where she started and where the enemy is, which is gonna allow her ADC or other teammates to walk on that trail and run towards the enemy. Furthermore, not just you increase your ADC's movement speed, but you're now on top of the enemy, stunning them, and then the Blizzard is gonna slow them after they get out of the stun. Now this sounds like a death sentence. It sounds like when you get hit by, like, let's say a Nautilus or a Leona ulti, and then they go in on you, you're not getting out. Like, you have a 10-second Blizzard, like, you are not getting out unless you like flash away and dash away and things like that. But yeah, I think this one's pretty insane. So next up we have support item changes. So the main support item changes is basically you deal 1 more damage to wards if you have support item, and when you evolve it you deal 2 more damage. So what this means, you already deal 1 damage. So when you have support item you deal 2 damage to wards, and when you evolve it you one-shot wards by dealing 3 damage to them instantly. So that's just a summary of what it does. Then we have Seed Jar, which is being converted from an item into a rune. Again, I think this is very, very niche. I'm not sure who is actually going to take this as an inspiration slot. Like, you have a lot better trees to go for, whichever champion you are. If you're going for inspiration, you have a lot better runes to take. So I'm not sure who's going to take this, but we'll have to see. Maybe in pro play. So Fleet is getting a buff where at 100 energy stacks, your next attack gains 100% attack speed. So think of like the Lord Dominic's Regard, the LDR passive. Previously, it's gone on to Fleet Footwork, and I honestly think that passive is barely noticeable. I don't think it really matters whatsoever. Sweet Tooth is now changing from an ally and you to only when you eat honey fruit you gain 15 gold. Honestly, not a lot of people take Sweet Tooth nowadays, so I don't think this is really that important. So next up, they're giving Hex Tech Soul buff to the Elder Dragon. In case you don't know what it is, basically when you have it and you attack like 3 times, you're gonna trigger a chain lightning that can hit 3 enemies, and that is gonna deal 100 true damage to each of them, and if you only hit 1 person, it's gonna deal 100% extra true damage. So yeah, actually, is it 3 attacks? Well, I guess in Wild Rift it may not be. Yeah, it doesn't actually say that it's 3 attacks, I think. It just says when dealing damage. So is this permanent? That if it's permanent, that's kind of nuts. But in PC it's every 3 auto attacks. So yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one, but if it's like every attack, this is completely insane. I mean, it's you already have Elder Dragon, right? And you're getting an extra buff on top of Elder Dragon. This just makes Elder Dragon so much more OP. But the T-Hex is getting some huge changes as well, so let's get into it. So first up, you have a new first ability, you have base stat changes. Now the base stat changes actually matters, because base stats, your AD is actually going down by a lot. So you see, it used to be like 900 max, and now it's like 600 something max, right? It's a huge nerf. Health, though, is going up at the earlier levels. Armor is going up as well, so you're getting more tanky. So basically, the long and short of it is you're getting more tanky, but you're doing less damage. So the magic resist, I think this is supposed to be 150. I believe that it can't be 50 to 15, doesn't make any sense. I believe this is supposed to be 150. But then you basically get tankier, but you deal less damage. So the missile ability is getting removed, and I think this makes a lot of sense because the T-Hex is meant to be like a sieging like monster. That's why you have your laser to kill towers, you have your tail sweep to remove enemies from under towers, and you have your W, that shield thing, to shield yourself and your allies and give them movement speed. But your Q doesn't really attack towers, it just attacks enemies. So this basically gives it the Rift Herald charge to deal damage to towers. So I think this makes a lot of sense. I think giving the previous one where it's really easy to walk out of and doesn't do a lot of damage doesn't really make sense. So I think this one makes a lot more sense. The cooldown of his W is getting halved, and the shielding is now 40% of attack damage. Recall that his attack damage was reduced a lot, so the shield's going to be a lot less, right? So the Iron Tail Sweep also gets a little bit of a shorter cooldown, but it's doing like 90% of attack damage instead of 50%. Now, take note that again the attack damage got reduced, so this does compensate a little bit for that. So I believe in the end you will do a little bit more damage than what you used to, and you will do more damage to minions on this one and this one as well. So his ulti going from 80% to 100%, again, I think that's just to compensate for the AD nerf. So I think you're going to do about the same amount. And the cooldown is getting halved. So that means you can use this laser a lot more often to take down more towers. So the TX is actually becoming really strong now, I believe. And the movement speed reduction is getting halved as well. So here is where I think the biggest change of the entire patch is, which is this. Over here. After you mount the T-Hex, all newly spawned minions on your team gain the Hand of Baron buff for a set duration. The buff effects scale with game time. So now, I'm not exactly sure what it means for a set duration, but the way I interpret it is after you slay T-Hex, all of your new minion waves are getting Baron buff. Now, previously I felt the TX was really weak. The main reason is it forced you to ARAM because, or like all your entire team go into one lane, because the only minions that get Baron buff is going to be the minions that are near the T-Hex. So everybody is basically forced to go to mid lane, for example. Maybe one guy can split push, maybe your Fiora can split push, but basically everybody has to go in the mid lane, and there's basically no macro. But with this change and instituting Baron buff back to all of the minions, it's going to mean that there are actually more plays you can do. For example, you can send the T-Hex bot, and then like 2 members of your team can go top, and now the enemy team doesn't know whether they should be going to stop the T-Hex or going to stop the 2 enemy team members, because there's Baron minions on all lanes. Now, I was wondering, why do you want to give all newly spawned minions Baron buff when you could just give the old Baron buff, which is basically, let's say the T-Hex buffs Baron minions, yeah sure, why not have it such that when ally champions are near minions, they give the minions Baron buff like what it used to be, because now it becomes a little bit too OP when previously it was just too weak. And the middle ground would be only buff the minions near champions, right? Like basically the Baron buff comes from the champion to the minion, and the minions get the Baron buff. Now the minions get the Baron buff even if there are no champions there, which now just makes Baron very OP, because the moment you get Baron, you're just going to have 3 lanes that are going to push out because of the Baron buff, because the minions are going to be so tanky and they're going to just destroy the enemy waves, right? So, yeah, I think that's a really, I wouldn't say it's a good change, but I prefer this to what we had previously. But it's just going to mean that Baron and Elder are so much harder to play against. Elder looks OP, Baron looks OP, and I think that this Baron buff change actually makes the Baron for Elder trade a little bit better now. Like previous patches, if you trade Elder and you take Baron, it's just not worth it. Like you're on the losing end of the trade very clearly. Now it's a little bit more even. Like Baron's power level is now, you know, back up there. So next we have Rift Scuttler changes. Basically, after the minute 7:30, if you kill the skull in Baron Lane, you have a speed shrine that grants vision, and you also open a gate at the back of the Baron pit, which only can be accessed by the team that slays it. Now this is really interesting because this could mean that Baron steals are gonna be easier, or escaping from after stealing after like sneaking a Baron is gonna be easier for that team. I think this is gonna be only in very niche scenarios. Of course, you could say that it's for an entire team, so like it could be a thing every game where this gate thing could come into effect, where everybody from one team can walk up through the gate, the enemy team has to flash over, or something like that. But yeah, so on the Dragon Lane, it's a speed shrine that moves up and down, basically moves up and down the rivers. It's not just permanently at one spot, so this basically makes vision a little bit easier. So I'm gonna summarize the changes here. Basically, they're adding a hex tech toolkit into the jungle. Alright, and basically you have to kill the relevant jungle monster to get the toolkit. Okay, so when you pick it up, of course you are going to get the toolkit. The mark will last for a certain duration. If it expires, then of course you don't get the toolkit anymore. And there are two new ones. So basically, we have the Jungle Rover, which spawns a ward that guards the section of jungle near you. The enemy jungle will be revealed when they enter, which I think is just changing the vision game, because this thing just automatically reveals enemies. Of course, you're not going to get it all the time, so yeah. Next one is Hextech Lens, which basically it's like the sweeping lens that you have, but you have to put it in a fixed area where you can basically find everything, essentially, and make it easier to destroy traps. You cannot use both the sweeping lens and the Hextech Lens at the same time. So next, this is a little bit strange, okay? Because here we have the Hextech Moon module, which is the Soraka alt one, and here it says toolkit for the jungle, right? This whole thing is for the jungle. So does this mean that this only applies to the jungle and the lane ones are still the same, or does this apply to the lanes as well? Now that remains to be seen. We'll have to see when the patch releases, but basically they're changing it from healing everybody by 15% missing health to only yourself for 15% max health. Now, of course, this is going to help yourself a lot more in terms of the 1v1 and in terms of just in general. But with this, you can help your teammates and get assists as well. So it's kind of a trade-off. I think this one's a little bit more consistent for yourself, of course. Now the Scorpion in the top lane is going to give you the XP and gold from the minions that you kill nearby. Now, basically, to summarize the Scorpion is something that's a lane objective. You can really only get it when you're already winning the lane, or when your opponent like resets before you and you can have an opportunity to take it. So basically, in general, you're going to get the Scorpion when you're winning the lane, right? If you're losing the lane, you're getting shoved in, you're not going to be getting the Scorpion, right? So the Scorpion is sort of like you get it when you're winning. So this is a little bit of like a win more kind of situation where you're already winning and the Scorpion is going to give you gold and XP from minions that it destroys as well. So yeah. So they're changing up the ping system. I'm not going to talk too much about this because we have to kind of see how it is when it comes out. It's really hard to kind of discern based on this. But this, I think, is either the biggest or second biggest change, on par with the Baron. When an enemy champion enters field of vision of a ward that belongs to your team, a timely alert will be sent out to allied champions nearby. Now this is just nuts, because basically this means if you're, let's say, you're mid lane, you put a ward in the pixel bush in the river, the jungler walks past it, it's gonna notify you that the jungler is there. Now, you could say that you're meant to be looking at the map anyway, but we all know in reality sometimes you're busy trading, you're busy in the shop, you're busy getting distracted, you don't notice him there, right? But now with this alert, depending on how big or how loud or how obvious the alert is, you're not gonna miss that out. It's just gonna make junglers or whoever else gangs a lot harder, because if you ward properly, now you should not be getting surprised by a jungler coming for a gank. So yeah. So there's a new game mode called Showdown. It doesn't say it's a new game mode here, but it is a new game mode where you basically get some arcane themed power-ups, which seems like it's gonna be fun. And in ranked, Master Tier is now gonna be split into 3 divisions. And yeah, banning phase is no longer available to players ranked gold and below, so only plat and above has banning phase, which yeah, sure, I guess yeah, it doesn't really affect me and a lot of people, I guess, because a lot of people are above gold. But of course, for gold and below, if you remove the ban phase, it does kind of make sense, because I assume that at that kind of level, you only really know how to play a few champions, so having them banned out would be pretty bad. So some champion recommendation thing, not really important. These these things as like titles, I think these are all not really important. This one, again, some tutorials when patches come out for new patches, not really important. And look for party. I never use this feature, so I don't think it's important. It's just to create like parties and party up with friends, things like that. And the gallery where you show off the skins you have and the emotes and things like that. Again, some changes there. I pretty much just glossed over it. I don't think it's very important. And we have a couple new skins. We have Dragon Trainer Heimerdinger out when the patch releases, and the new Stargazer line. I think this is the third wave of Stargazers, and of course the Wild Pass skin, Anniversary skin, Nunu and Bilam, Ranked skin, and Shanghai Scrolls coming out at the start of November. So that's pretty much it for the patch, except for a couple of bug fixes which you can check out yourself. But that's pretty much it for the patch. So thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.